Good morning, everyone. Now, in last day's class, we have seen that how to use the similarity transformation in order to reduce the partial differential equations, that will be a governing equation of solute balance over the mass transfer boundary layer, into an ordinary differential equation. We also looked into the solution of the ordinary differential equations, and then we looked into the algorithm of how to implement that governing the solution of the governing equation in order to calculate the permeate flux and permeate concentration. In fact, what we have done, we wrote an algorithm by which you can obtain by using an iterative method you can obtain the profile of permeate concentration and permeate flux along the membrane length. Once you get the profile as a function of x, the flux and the permeate concentration, then you can do an numerical integration by using Simpson's 1/3 rule or something like that, or trapezoidal rule, and one can get the length averaged permeate flux and permeate concentration. Then what we argued, that still this method is a bit more complicated. We kept on arguing that we should seek something a simpler method, but which will be accurate, simpler but it will be accurate, which will give the full feature of whatever we are trying to achieve. So what we did, we have seen that there will be we can recast the whole solution into two coupled nonlinear algebraic equations. Okay. If you now solve these two algebraic equations again by an iterative technique, then you can get the length averaged permeate flux and length averaged permeate concentration directly. Okay. So we are basically going to do that. In order to do that, the first thing that you have to do, you have to get an expression of length averaged Sherwood number or length averaged mass transfer coefficient. So we are doing the derivation of expression of length averaged Sherwood number or mass transfer coefficient. Or the non-dimensional version of mass transfer coefficient is Sherwood number. Okay. So first thing we wrote yesterday, we wrote down the definition of mass transfer coefficient. It will be minus del C del y evaluated at y equal to 0 divided by C at y equal to 0, that is nothing but membrane surface concentration C at y equal to 0 minus C at the bulk. The C at y equal to 0 is nothing but Cm. So therefore, you can write down K Cm star minus 1 is equal to minus d u naught h x d raised to the power 1 upon 3 dc star d eta at eta equal to 0. How did you get this expression? What we did, now we express del c del y, the derivative, in terms of dc d eta. So we expressed this derivative with respect to y in terms of the similarity parameter eta. Once you do that, all these things will appear. Okay. So I told you to take it as a home assignment and get this derivation, and C at y is equal to 0 is nothing but Cm, and what we did, we just divide both expression by C naught so that we can express the concentration as a non-dimensional quantity. So Cm star is nothing but Cm by C naught and C star is nothing but C by C naught. So once you do that, and if you substitute the expression of Cm star, what is Cm star? Cm star is nothing but the constant K2, if you remember, and del C dc star d eta, it is related to the constant function of the integration constant K1. So therefore, one can write down K is nothing but K1 divided by K2 minus 1 u0 d square hx raised to the power 1 upon 3. So I just omitted couple of steps here. So you just get the expression of dc star d eta at eta equal to 0, that we have derived in the last class. In yesterday's class, we have derived the expression of dc star d eta at eta equal to 0, and that will be a function of the constant of integration K1, and Cm star is nothing but the constant of integration K2. So once you substitute that, you will be getting this expression. Now if you look into the expression of K1 and K2 that we have derived in the last class, this is nothing but minus A1 RR divided by 1 minus A1 RR I. Okay. And K2 is nothing but your Cm star, and this will be 1 minus 1 divided by 1 minus A1 RR the integration I. The integration I is basically a definite integral that will be in the form of exponential minus eta cube by 3 minus a eta d eta. Okay. So we will be in a position now, if you simplify this expression, if you substitute the value expression of K1 and K2 into the definition of mass transfer coefficient, K1 minus K1 divided by K2 minus 1 will turn out to be 1 over I. Okay. Just substitute that, you will find it. Okay. Substitute the expression of K1, this expression of K1 here, substitute the expression of K2 here and simplify it. So what you get is that you will be getting K as 1 over I1 U0 d square divided by Hx raised to the power 1 upon 3. So once you get the expression of K, and this expression will give this I1 is basically a definite integral, so it will be returning you a value. Okay. U0 is constant, d is constant, h is constant, so K is inversely proportional to x to the power 1 upon 3. Once you get the expression of K, you can get the expression of Sherwood number as a function of x star. Okay. What is Sherwood number? So Sherwood number is nothing but K d by d. Okay. So this will be 1 over I1 d by d U0 d square divided by Hx raised to the power 1 upon 3. Now we write the half height in terms of equivalent diameter, h is equal to d by 4, and express x star as x by L. Okay. Then we can easily find out, you substitute all this here in the expression, and you will be getting the expression of Sherwood number as a function of x star as 4 to the power 1 upon 3 divided by I. The whole thing within the bracket becomes Reynolds-Smith d by L raised to the power 1 upon 3 x star raised to the power minus 1 upon 3. In fact, in the last class we have derived that the whole thing that is within the bracket with a power 1 by 3 will turn out to be Reynolds-Smith d by L. So those students who have not attended the last class, please go through the lecture notes of the last class, otherwise you will be lost. Okay. So now you are in a position, once you do get the expression of Sherwood number as a function of x star, you will be in a position to get the length average Sherwood number. What is it? 0 to integration 0 to 1 sh x star dx star. Okay. So once you carry out this integration, the whole integration turns out to be 2.381 divided by I Reynolds-Smith d by L raised to the power 1 upon 3. Now this is a very crucial and important relationship. From this important relationship we can get various interpretation about the mass transfer coefficient of Sherwood number in a channel where the channel walls are porous, unlike the channel walls are impervious in case of heat and mass transfer analogy. Okay. Now let us see how we can do it. Now depending on the value of I or the physical situation, there are several simplified cases that will arise. Case number 1 is no porous wall. That means we are talking about a flow through an impervious conduit. That means the membrane is not present, the wall is impervious. In that case, there is no question of permeate flux. If there is no question of permeate flux, the Peclet wall, which is nothing but non-dimensional permeate flux J d by d, there is J is equal to 0, that means Pw equal to 0. So in that case what happens, you can evaluate the integral I, and the fate of integral I becomes this exponential minus eta cube by 3 d eta. What is this? This is this you can evaluate numerically, and this integral turns out to be 1.288. You can use a trapezoidal rule and fit this expression and evaluate the integral, put the infinite value as the upper limit of the integration, maybe 10 or 12, and you can find out that this integration results a value 1.288. If you substitute this in the expression of length average Sherwood number, what it will give you, you will be getting 1.85 Reynolds-Smith d by L raised to the power 1 upon 3. Now if you remember, we have talked about this relationship of Sherwood number of mass transfer coefficient earlier when we were talking about the Sherwood mass transfer in a wall, which will be obtained from the heat and mass transfer analogy for the heat transfer in a non-porous conduit. Okay. This is known as Leveck's relation. Okay. This is the Leveck's relation. It was in fact derived in the year 1888, almost 120 years back. Now, these expression, so that is why I told you when we talked about the Sherwood number relations under the laminar flow conditions, they are exactly relations, they are not correlations. They can be obtained from the fundamental theory, like whatever you have derived right away. But on the other hand, the Dittus-Boelter relationship for the turbulent flow, that is 0.023 Reynolds raised to a 0.8 Schmidt raised to a 0.33, that is a correlation. It is generated from the experimental data, conducted and fitting the data into that particular form. On the other hand, Leveck's relation, the Nusselt number and Sherwood number relations for the flow through a tube or for the flow through a pipe or rectangular conduit, they are the relations, they are not correlations. So, this is Leveck's relation, and now let us look into the expression of I, case number 2. This case is of particular interest to us. In this case, my PW is not equal to 0. There is a wall suction that is present in the system. That means you are talking about a porous conduit, a conduit which will be having porous wall. Okay. Now, for the case of reverse osmosis to ultrafiltration, the reverse osmosis flux will be extremely small. It is almost non-porous conduit. Okay. So, J will be pretty small. On the other hand, the ultrafiltration flux will be higher and microfiltration flux will be highest. So, the effect of porosity on the wall will be much prominent when we move from the operation from the reverse osmosis to microfiltration. So, in the case of ultrafiltration and microfiltration, this effect of porosity will be of primary interest. And if you plot the value of we have seen, we have looked into quantity, we have defined a quantity lambda, the suction parameter yesterday, if you remember, that is nothing but Pw bar divided by Reynolds Schmidt d by L raised to the power 1 upon 3. Okay. For a typical case, this quantity Reynolds Schmidt d by L will be ranging in the order of 10 to the power 3 to 10 to the power 5 under the laminar flow conditions, and the value of PW that you will be getting in case of microfiltration, that will be in the order of 10 to the power minus 5 meter cube per meter square second. In case of ultrafiltration, it will be 2 or 3 into 10 to the power minus 6 meter cube per meter square second. So, you know what is the order of magnitude or range of values of this PW, the permeate flux in the case of reverse osmosis and in the case of microfiltration. We know the typical value of Reynolds Schmidt d by L under the laminar flow conditions. Under these cases, for reverse osmosis to ultrafiltration, this lambda maximum it varies for 15. Okay. So, it varies from 0 to 15. Which case will correspond to 0? The case 0 means PW equal to 0, that means there is no wall suction. So, we get back this relationship non-porous conduit. For the case lambda equal to 0, we get back the non-porous conduit. For any other value of lambda which is not equal to 0 corresponds to the porous wall, right. Now, if you remember the expression of I becomes 0 to infinity exponential minus eta cube by 3 minus lambda, right, lambda eta d eta, right. This lambda is nothing but Pw by Reynolds Schmidt d by L raised to the power 1 upon 3. So, we know that typically the lambda varies from 0 to 15. Now, what we can do, we can take different values of lambda. This will this is for reverse osmosis and this is for microfiltration. Okay. So, we can take different values of lambda between 0 and 15 and calculate this integral. This is a definite integral, there is absolutely no problem, and if you can plot 1 over I versus lambda, it will show a plot something like this, okay, and this is 15. Okay. So this curve can be obtained by numerical integration of the integral definite integral I by putting various values of lambda. Now what we can do? We can fit a polynomial of in terms of lambda. Okay. So if you do that and substitute in a governing equation, the Sherwood number expression becomes 1.85 Reynolds Smith d by L raised to the power 1 upon 3 1 plus 0.32 lambda plus 0.02 lambda square minus 8 into 10 to the power minus 4 lambda cube. Okay. So this lambda is nothing but PW divided by Reynolds Smith d by L raised to the power 1 upon 3. If lambda equal to 0, now so it basically this expression is generated from the fundamentals. Okay, we are doing numerical integration of this integral I for the various values of lambda, and after doing a numerical integration we are fitting a curve, a polynomial in terms of lambda, okay, third order polynomial, and substitute in the governing equation. Now if you see that if the wall is not porous, if it is impervious, then lambda equal to 0. If lambda is equal to 0, put this expression, you get back your Levex relationship. If lambda is not equal to 0, you will be getting this expression, and that is the correction to the Levex relation for the non-porous conduit, and this is derived in 1997, and that is the first work of my PhD thesis. Okay. So if you look into the Journal of Membrane Science, volume number 109 and 1997, give a search, I forgot the page number, you will get this article. Okay. So we have solved this problem for the rectangular conduit, for the tubular flow, for the radial channel flow. Okay. So similar analysis can be carried out for the tubular flow. If the conduit is tube, that means the flow is occurring through a tube and the wall is porous. Okay. So the membrane is basically kept in the wall, and the Sherwood number relationship can be obtained in the same fashion. You can look into that paper and see the derivation in detail, and the Sherwood number, the length average Sherwood number becomes 1.62 Reynolds Smith d by L raised to the power 1 upon 3 multiplied by 1 plus 0.37 lambda plus 0.03 lambda square minus 10 to the power minus 4 lambda cube. Okay. So if lambda is equal to 0 for the non-porous conduit, you get back the Levex solution for the flow through a tube, that is 1.62 Reynolds Smith d by L raised to the power 1 upon 3, and d is basically the inner diameter of the tube. Now let us look into the calculation method, how it increases the speed of the calculation, how it simplifies our calculation, what we are aiming for. Okay. Let us say faster method, faster procedure to calculate or to predict system performance. Okay. Now we are talking about again the same rectangular geometry, flow through a rectangular conduit. If you remember, the boundary condition, that is on the that is the condition, the boundary condition that is the interface between porous membrane and flow outside is J times Cm minus Cp is equal to minus D del C del y at y equal to 0. Now this relationship is valid for every x location in the channel. That means if you talk about a control volume between x and x plus delta x, this relationship will hold good. That means it will be valid for every x location. Now instead of delta x, now if we consider this delta x is basically the full length of the membrane module. Okay. In that case, all these quantities will be replaced by the length averaged quantities, right. So we can talk about a length averaged quantities Cm bar minus Cp bar is equal to minus D del C del y, y equal to 0. The whole derivative will be a bar, the length averaged bar, and if you look into the definition of mass transfer coefficient, this will be nothing but KL bar Cm minus Cp, Cm minus C naught, right. We have just in the beginning of this class we have written the definition of mass transfer coefficient. KL is equal to minus d del C del y at y equal to 0 divided by Cm minus C naught. Okay. So now you take these two relationship and see what you get. You will be getting J is equal to KL bar Cm minus C naught divided by Cm RR. Okay. All these are length averaged quantities. C naught bar is, there is no meaning of C naught bar because we know the feed concentration. So that is C naught. Now we make it non-dimensional. That means we multiply both sides by D equivalent divided by diffusivity of the solute. So let us see what you get. J d by d is equal to KL bar dE by d. Make it non-dimensional. So this becomes Cm star minus 1 divided by Cm star RR, right. So this becomes nothing but the length averaged permeate flux non-dimensional PW, and this will be nothing but length average Sherwood number, and this will be divided by RR 1 minus 1 by Cm star. Okay. So you will be getting the expression of permeate flux in terms of length average Sherwood number, and we know the expression of Sherwood number in terms of PW. What is that? If you write that, you will be getting this as 1 over RR 1 minus 1 by Cm star, and what is Sherwood number length average? This will be 1.85 Reynolds-Smith d by L raised to the power 1 upon 3 multiplied by 1 plus 0.02 lambda, right. That was the expression, I guess. 0.32 lambda, 0.32 lambda plus 0.02 lambda square minus 8 into 10 to the power minus 4 lambda cube. Lambda being a number which will be nothing but PW bar divided by Reynolds-Smith d by L raised to the power 1 upon 3. So this will be giving you an expression of a relationship, an algebraic relationship between Cm star and PW, okay, where there are two unknowns PW and Cm star, and you have the Darcy's law that is valid throughout the whole module. That means PW is equal to B1 times 1 minus delta pi by delta P. Okay. This is equation number 1, this is equation number 2. Now these we have defined in the last class, that is from the Darcy's law. If you make it non-dimensional, you will be getting this expression. So what is this expression? Delta pi will be function of Cm star, if you remember. So I will get an algebraic equation between PW bar and Cm star. I will be getting another algebraic equation between PW bar and Cm star. Two equations, two unknown. Now they can be solved by using an iterative technique, by using some nonlinear algebraic equation solver. So two equations, two unknown. What are the two unknowns? PW bar and Cm star. Okay. These two equations 1 and 2 will be simply solved, and one can get an estimate of length averaged permeate flux and non-dimensional length averaged permeate membrane surface concentration. Once you will be knowing the non-dimensional membrane surface concentration, you will be in a position to get the permeate concentration as well. That is related to Cp is nothing but 1 minus real retention times Cm bar. So once you get the length average permeate membrane surface concentration, you will be in a position to estimate the length average permeate concentration. So this is the quickest way to solve the cross flow system in a rectangular conduit without solving the profile of the permeate flux and permeate concentration, and first of all without solving any partial differential equations. So we got rid of solution of partial differential equation. In the last class we have seen how we get the profiles of permeate flux and permeate concentration, and from that we land into the length averaged permeate flux and permeate concentration. In fact, the length averaged quantities are of interest to you, because you cannot measure these quantities at every x location. What you can measure? You can measure a length averaged permeate flux or permeate concentration. So therefore, that is of primary interest to you, and this shortcut method via the Sherwood number, length average Sherwood number or mass transfer coefficient, that will give you direct estimation of length averaged permeate flux and permeate concentration. That is why this is the shortest method to model the system. Okay. So that goes for the cross flow system in a rectangular conduit. In a tubular module, the same thing will be valid, only difference is the D equivalent in the rectangular thing will be replaced by the inner diameter of the tube, number 1. Number 2, the expression of Sherwood number will be different in case of the tubular module, that will be 1.62 Reynolds made D by L raised to 1 upon 3 into this expression will be, this polynomial will be something else that you have already written down. So one can solve the, by the same way one can solve the get the system, predict the system performance in case of tubular flow without having any adjustable parameter. You can predict it from the fundamentals. Okay. Next important thing that we will be doing, probably after a couple of classes I will be solving some of the problems in the class itself, so that things will be very clear how to use these theories to have an actual prediction in a real problem, okay, real system. The next thing that I will be teaching you, that is the unstirred batch system. What is unstirred batch system? Unstirred batch system is basically, it is a small setup, it can be large setup as well. There are two flanges, there will be in fact 3 flanges. There is a top flange, there is a cylindrical volume, and there will be a bottom flange. Okay. The top flange is basically, this top and bottom flange will be connected to the body, it is a circular body, and in the bottom flange there will be concentric grooves. On it we put the a solid surface, a solid substrate that is very porous, let us say porous stainless steel support. Over that we put the membrane, we cut a membrane piece from a rectangular sheet into a circular shape and put it over there, and then the solution is fed here. Now the whole thing is closed, and this solution is pressurized by a nitrogen cylinder. Okay. Now you under the nitrogen cylinder pressure, the filtration will be carried out, and you will be getting the permeate flux, and you are not using any stirring in the system. So when this unstirred batch system, why this unstirred batch system is so important that we will be studying it. The application of unstirred batch system is twofold. First one is that to validate the concept. What is the validation of the concept? Suppose you would like to treat some effluent or some fruit juice or some kind of liquid stream. Now, which membrane you have to select? Suppose the membrane, you will be having a wide varieties of membrane. If you talk about the ultrafiltration membrane, you will be having probably 10-15 molecular cutoffs. Which membrane you have to select? That is a very crucial aspect. Before conducting any experiment, you have to identify which membrane is suitable for your particular purpose. Okay. So what we can do, since it is a small apparatus and there is no need of any power, and you just charge the cylinder, charge the feed tank, charge this volume with the feed solution and pressurize it and leave it. Okay. So what you will be getting? You will be getting the permeate flux. So you just get when you get the permeate, you just analyze the permeate quality. Okay. If you see the permeate quality is up to the mark and it is acceptable, that membrane will be good enough for a higher scale up or higher module. Now, number 1. Number 2 is that if a concept is validated that you will be using 10,000 molecular cutoff, that will suffice to validate your system, to bring down the concentration below a particular level, that will be the best, because this is a worst performer. Unstirred batch system is the worst performer. Why it is a worst performer compared to the cross flow system? Why it is a worst performer? Because you are not using any stirring, you are not using any turbulence. If you increase the turbulence in an actual system, for example, the cross flow system, the system that we have just studied now, or a cross flow system in a rectangular channel, or in a spiral wound module, or in a tubular module, the cross flow system will always perform better than the unstirred batch system, because in the unstirred batch system there is no turbulence and the solutes will be deposited over the membrane surface. The effect of concentration polarization will be maximum there. Since the polarization will be maximum, the permeate quality will tend to deteriorate the maximum level. Even in that cell, if it satisfies you the environmental regulation or rule, that means in a cross flow system or in an actual system where the turbulence is more, then it will be a sure shot success there as well. Okay. So, that is why unstirred batch systems are quite crucial, and that gives you the experiments conducted in such systems will give you a first hand information or confirmative measure that what you are doing, that is a right thing, that is a right step. Okay. This is a number 1. So, it is a worst performer. So, if performance is satisfactory here, in this setup, in an actual setup it will surely succeed. The process will work. Okay. And second thing is, second advantage of using the unstirred batch system is that sometimes when you are talking about an industrial effluent, you are not very sure about the physical quantities. And if you remember, if you just whatever we have done, the modeling we have done, if you know the physical properties of the solutes perfectly, if you know the diffusivity, if you know the density, if you know the viscosity, all these things, if you know the osmotic pressure relationship, how it varies with the concentration, all the calculations can be done. But in an actual industrial effluent, it is very difficult to estimate the osmotic pressure, it is very difficult to estimate the diffusivity of the system, because it will be containing 10,000 elements. Instead of one species, there will be thousands of species present in that system. So, it will be very difficult, you do not know what are the, first of all it is very difficult to identify what are the species present. Number 1, number 2 is, even if you identify the species present, what are the major species, and it will be very difficult to get the value of diffusivity for each and every species, and it will be very difficult to get the value of osmotic pressure expression as a function of concentration with respect to each and every species. So, it is, so basically you should know what will be the effective osmotic pressure, you should know what is the effective diffusivity, right. So, for that, if you look into the effective osmotic pressure, if you look into the expression of osmotic pressure, it is a third order polynomial in concentration. That means there are 3 constants involved in it, because you do not know the molecular weight as well. If you do not know the first constant, even because you do not know the molecular weight, first constant is the Van 't Hoff's constant RT by m, or you know T is the temperature in absolute scale, m is the molecular weight. You do not know the molecular weight because it is very difficult to estimate the species itself. So, there are 3 unknown constants involved in the expression of osmotic pressure, and one more constant is an unknown constant that is difficult to estimate, that is the effective diffusivity. Okay. So, at least these 4 constants are really unknown. The viscosity density one can measure, okay, viscosity density one can measure and can put in a program or in your calculations. So, 4 constants have to be determined. So, again you have to go for an optimization. For the optimization, for determination of 4 constants using a theory, you must be requiring a huge experimental data bank. That bank must be consisting about 20 or more than 20 experimental points. Then you will be probably thinking of to estimate 4 constants by doing an optimization subroutine. Now, getting 20 experiments means in a cross flow cell or the steady state experiment that we have talked about, that means one set of experiments will give you one set of data, okay, one permeate flux and one permeate quality. But so you have to conduct huge number of experiments, So at least 25 or 27 experiments, 27 is 3 into 3, that means feed concentration, operating pressure and cross flow velocity. If you vary all these 3 operating parameters 3 times, then you will be getting 3 to the power 3, 27 experiments. So minimum 27 experiments need to be conducted to estimate these 4 unknown constants, maximum 36 or more. Okay. Now conduction of these many experiments will take huge amount of time, huge amount of manpower, huge amount of cost. But if you conduct one unstirred batch experiment, in one experiment you can generate more than 27 data. How will you do that? Now in an unstirred batch cell, what happens is that over the membrane the solutes will be getting deposited, and it is the whole system is left to its natural tendency. Okay, you are not controlling it. Okay, you are not putting any stirrer, you are not inducing any turbulence in your system, so it will be left to itself. So solutes will be depositing over the membrane surface. So you will be getting a development of concentration boundary layer, and this concentration boundary layer will be now a function of time. Okay, this delta becomes a function of time. Now if delta becomes function of time, then what you can do, you will be getting a permeate flux which will be a function of time, right, and you will be getting a membrane surface concentration which will be a function of time. So therefore if you have a measurement, the permeate flux versus time will be having a trend something like this. So you can have various experimental points. On these curves. Now you can conduct these experiments, let us say for 2 hours, you can conduct these experiments let us say for 5 hours. Every 10 minutes you can take a measurements, or every 5 minutes or every 15 minutes, it is up to you, you can take a measurements. So you can get the permeate flux and permeate concentration data. This is Cp as a function of time. So you can collect as many data as possible. Now every time measurements, every time point, these measurements will be J experimental and Cp experimental. The ith point will be corresponding to J expi and Cp expi. So you can have huge number of these data. On the other hand, if you would like to have a steady state cross flow system, one experiment of let us say duration of 2 hours will or 1 hour will be giving you one data. Okay. So you have to conduct so many experiments. On the other hand, if you do an unstirred batch cell, you can generate so many data from let us say 2 hours or 3 hours by conducting one single experiment. Then you can fit this data in your optimization subroutine, let us say 25 data or 27 data, and can estimate the 4 unknown constants. Okay. That is why the study of unstirred batch cell is very important. Okay. Okay. So let us write down the, so again the problem, for the modeling the problem remains same. We have to solve the fluid flow plus mass transfer in concentration boundary layer, that will be function of time and y. So it grows in the y direction. So it is a function of time and y, and it has to be coupled with transport through the porous membrane. Okay. In the earlier case, it was a function of, it was a steady state process, it was a function of x and y, and in this case it is a function of t and y. So if you write down the governing equation of solute mass balance in concentration boundary layer, it will be nothing but del C del T plus V del C del Y is equal to D del square C del Y square. This is the governing equation of concentration solute mass balance within the concentration boundary layer. And since there is no other flow in the x direction or whatever. So, V will be nothing but minus J. What is J? J is the permeate flux at y equal to 0. Okay. So, the governing equation now becomes del C del T minus J del C del Y is equal to D del square C del Y square. This equation has to be solved along with its initial and boundary conditions in order to get C, the concentration within the mass transfer boundary layer, as a function of y and t. Then that has to be evaluated at y is equal to 0, that is at the membrane surface, and that has to be hooked up with the transport law through the porous membrane or the Darcy's law. It will be giving you a prediction of the permeate flux, how it varies with time. Okay. So, that is the idea. So, in order to solve the concentration at y is equal to 0 or Cm at the membrane surface, you have to solve this equation within the mass transfer boundary layer. Now, in order to solve this equation, you require to have one initial condition with respect to t and two boundary conditions with respect to y. So, let us write down the conditions. At t is equal to 0, C is equal to C naught, because it was same concentration everywhere. At y is equal to delta, C is equal to C naught. At y is equal to 0, you will be having the convective diffusive convective diffusive boundary condition, mixed boundary condition present, J Cm minus Cp plus D del C del y is equal to 0 as earlier. So, this becomes J Cm Rr plus D del C del y is equal to 0. This is equivalent. Now, again the mass transfer boundary layer will be extremely thin, it will be in the order of micron, whereas the actual dimension of the system will be probably 3 or 4 times higher in order of magnitude. So, we can replace this boundary condition by y is equal to infinity. Okay. So, we can do a modification here. For the ease of mathematical treatment, we can replace this boundary condition y equal to infinity, C is equal to C naught. Again, as we have discussed earlier, the governing equation is a parabolic partial differential equation, and one boundary condition is at infinity. That means, it can have a similarity solution, and this case it will be having indeed a similarity solution, and this partial differential can be reduced to an ordinary differential equation. Okay. But before that, we have to identify what is the similarity parameter and what is the functional variation of the similarity parameter with respect to the independent variable y and t. But before that, we should make this equation non-dimensional, and that will make our life simple. We write C star is equal to C by C naught, write y star is equal to y by r, where r is the radius, inner radius of the cell, of the ultrafiltration cell. It is a cylindrical cell. So, it is the inner radius of that cell, and just put it there. So, it becomes r square and r square by d del C star del t minus P E W del C star del y is equal to del square C star del y star square. What is P E W? It is the non-dimensional flux, that is J R by solute diffusivity. The physical dimension becomes R here instead of D equivalent, okay, in the earlier case. So, it is J R times D divided by D. So, what it does? So, in the and sister is C by C naught. So, right hand side is completely non-dimensional. The second term on the left hand side is non-dimensional. The first term of the left hand side has to be a non-dimensional quantity. That means, T D by R square must be having a non-dimensional, it must be defined as non-dimensional time tau. It will be having a unit of time. If you replace the unit of T diffusivity and R square, it will be giving a, it is a unit free number. Okay. So, del C star, in fact, that is how one has to find out what is the non-dimensional form of any independent quantity. If you do not know, if it is not apparent that what is the form of non-dimensional time or something, some independent parameter, if you know the others, so just substitute there and do a simplification and make other terms non-dimensional. So, the third term, which what will be the non-dimensional version, that will appear automatically. Okay. So, del C star del tau minus P W del C star del y star is equal to del square C star del y star square. Okay. So, this is the governing equation, and the initial conditions, non-dimensional initial conditions, are at initial and boundary conditions at tau equal to 0, C star is equal to 1, at y star is equal to 0, del C star del y star plus P W C M star R R equal to 0, and at y star is equal to infinity, C star is equal to 1. So, that is the complete problem statement of this undisturbed batch cell. So, this is the governing equation, these three are the various initial and boundary conditions. You will be having two boundary conditions in y and one initial condition in x, in tau, in time. Now, you are in a position to, we should find out what will be the similarity parameter in this case, and we do the same type of analysis as earlier. That means, the governing equation must be valid at the edge of boundary layer. At the edge of boundary layer, del C del y will be equal to 0, because we utilize this property because the governing equation is valid within the control volume as well as on the boundary. In contrast, the boundary conditions are valid only on the boundary, but not within the volume of the system. So, we evaluate this governing equation at the edge of the boundary layer. So, what we will be getting is del C star del tau will be roughly del square C star del y star square, okay, at the edge of boundary layer. Now, do an order of magnitude analysis as earlier. Del C star is written by delta C star, and this delta change in delta C star occurs within the time tau from the beginning. So, delta tau will be nothing but tau minus 0. So, this becomes tau, right, and that will delta square C star is again some kind of delta C star change in concentration, and delta y star square will be delta star minus 0 square minus 0 square. Okay. So, that is the right. So, you will be basically this delta C star will be cancelled, and delta tau will be replaced by tau, and you will be landing up with delta star square will be equal to tau. Okay. Delta star will be nothing but root over tau. Okay. So, now if you define the similarity parameter, the similarity parameter is defined as y by delta, that means y star by delta star, okay, divided by radius on numerator as well as denominator. So, this becomes y star by root over tau. Okay. So, this is the form of similarity parameter in this particular case. So, the independent variables y and tau will be related as y star into tau to the power minus half. That particular combination is the similarity parameter in this case. It is exactly like the similar earlier one, where it was equal to y star divided by x star to the power 1 upon 3. In this case, it is y star divided by tau to the power half. Okay. Now, using this similarity parameter, now what we can do? We can put the derivatives of the governing equation in terms of similarity parameter, only one parameter. So, therefore, you can reduce. So, we reduce because now the two independent parameters no longer exist, only one parameter will be sufficient, that is the similarity parameter, the combined parameter. So, the whole governing equation can be written in the form of combined parameter, and now it becomes an ordinary differential equation which can be solved as we have solved earlier in the case of cross flow system, and we will look into the solution in detail in the next class. Okay. Thank you.